Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, I'm JTP and this is my list of top games of 2015. So 2015 has been a hell of a year for games and this is my personal list of my favourites. Now before I start, bear in mind this is my personal opinion, you are entitled to your opinion. I'm happy to hear your opinion in the comments down below. Just let's not insult each other's opinion, shall we? Let's keep it nice and social and calm in the comments. With that said, without further ado, let's get to the first list. Okay, the ways it's going to work, I have 3 categories of games of 2015. There are games I've played on my channel, games I haven't played on my channel, and then games that didn't quite make my top 3s, but I do think deserve some recognition. So let's start off with the first category, games I've played on my channel. So at number 1, the game that I've played on my channel, which I've enjoyed the most this year, has got to be The Witcher 3. I'm still not done with it, and even after I've stopped recording, I will not be done with it for a long time. It's a game that's so rich in stuff to do, and the environments are so lifelike, and the graphics and everything about that game I love, and every time I sit down to record it, I find myself playing a good 3-4 hours of it in one chunk. Another good thing about The Witcher is, of course, the Witcher charm. I do like how you're able to shape your story and say what you want to say. It gives you different options. It's not linear at all. You are literally at mercy to the world. You can decide how the environment goes, you can decide how people think of you, you can decide how your story goes. I'm aware there are many different endings to The Witcher and I'll only ever get to see a few because the game is so big, and it really is, for what it is, for how much content is there, for the quality of the game, it really is worth the £60 you pay when you first get the game. So for these reasons alone, I am putting The Witcher 3 at number 1 for games I've played on my channel. At number 2 is Battlefield Hardline. This game is arguably the most fun I've ever had recording any series on my channel. I had so much fun recording Battlefield Hardline on my channel. It is my favourite series to date to record and upload, which is weird because it definitely wasn't the most popular series of my channel, but nonetheless I enjoyed it a lot. And I think what I enjoyed about it was the story was compelling. I loved how they made it into a bit of a TV show. They integrated games and TV shows, and they did a previously and a next time to make you anticipate for the next episode. Aside from the story-driven single player, the multiplayer also featured many different game modes, my favourite being Hotwire, where you have to get in a car and drive around, and the longer you drive around in, the more money you make. This made it more fun ranking up and getting new gear, as it integrated new ways of getting your money within the game. Instead of just playing a normal deathmatch and get money at the end for how many kills you've got, instead you're driving a car around actively and you're earning the money within game. And of course the mechanics were polished off as you'd expect from any shooter on the AAA market. And at number 3 has to be Rocket League. What I love about Rocket League is that somebody looked at the gaming market and went, people like car games, people like football games, so what if we put the two together to make one awesome game? And that's exactly what it was. I also loved the fact that yes, people played it professionally, but I didn't play it as a professional player. I played it as for more fun. And yes, it is a competitive game, but in competitive games like Call of Duty, a lot of people rage. But on Rocket League, it's just impossible. The bright colours and, you know, the childness of it really makes the atmosphere a lot calmer than any other competitive game. And also the fact that it was, of course, a really creative idea. New games like this are always welcomed on the market, as different new game ideas for the market are coming scarce now. You've got the shooter, you've got the horror, you've got the sport, but you know, not enough people combine 2 genres together to make a whole new game. On top of all this, Rocket League isn't too much money. I got it for free in a deal, and the DLCs are quite cheap as well, making it all worth your money. Talking about money, it isn't pay to win either. You can spend money on the DLCs. It doesn't make you any more advanced to show over other people. It just makes you look cooler, which is absolutely fine by me. I love a game that makes it so you don't have to pay to win. Alright, you've heard my top 3 games for games I've played on this channel for 2015, but I do play a lot of games off camera as well. So what are my top 3 games of 2015 that you guys haven't played with me? At number 1, without a doubt, has to be Life is Strange. Life is Strange is an amazing example of what gamers can really do with this technology. It gave people a whole new idea of what games can be. The stereotype of gamers is sit down for a bit of Call of Duty, shoot each other, really violent, maybe a bit of Mortal Kombat, blood, guts, swearing, everything that's inappropriate. However, Life is Strange really touched on life issues, and it really touched on some very, very finicky issues, things like suicide, things like drugs, things like death, things like rape, and it did it so well that I have a lot of respect for that game. Also, the fact that I've lived for 15 years now, almost 16, as a white British boy, and what this game does is something that I've never seen any other game before do. It follows the life of a teenage girl, and you know, we've had female protagonists, of course, Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, and we've got Ellie in The Last of Us. However, we have never had a game that just follows her life, and yes, her life is very interesting, but I think a lot of developers have tried to stay away from that kind of stuff because they can't think of any good ideas of how to make the game interesting. But Life is Strange really nailed it. They integrated so many different stories. At one point, there's about 4 different storylines that you're trying to keep hold of, and it just wraps up. By the end of the first season, it just wraps up so nicely. It leaves you either feeling quite sad, either feeling very happy. It leaves you feeling very emotional, which not enough games do these days. Finally, one more thing on Life is Strange. I have to hand it to the developers. They did a lot of work on that game, and there were a couple of little finite issues at the start, like lip syncing wasn't so good, but the developers fixed that so quickly and so nicely. The game's quality was never really affected. And for those reasons, Life is Strange has to be my favourite game that I haven't played on the channel this year. At number 2 is Dying Light. Dying Light is another example of 2 genres of game coming together as one. I love free running and I love zombies, so Dying Light was kind of like the game for me of 2015. Dying Light integrates everyday zombie survival with awesome parkour free running from like Mirror's Edge. What I love about it is every time you step out of a safe zone, it is thrilling, whether it's in the night time or the daytime. What makes it this thrilling is there's zombies who can free run after you, and there's also a bunch of different missions, a very interesting storyline which you can follow, and you don't only go to one place, but you go to 2 places. You start off in the slums, which is very small, slow buildings, not a lot of free running to be done, but then about halfway through the game you move to a bigger city with very high buildings, and it makes it even more thrilling then, because you know if you screw up a move and you fall to the ground, you are dead. Another thing that made this game very thrilling is you have these zombies at night called volatiles. They will hunt you down, they are very fast and they are very hard to kill. This made it more of a horror game as well, so you could argue there are 3 different kinds of games integrated into one here. On top of this, the graphics were of course very good, the free running was very smooth, and the combat was even smoother. This made the game very enjoyable to play for hours on end. I really enjoyed this game and couldn't leave it alone for a very long time, which makes it number 2 on my list of games I haven't played on my channel in 2015. Finally, for this category is Ark Survival Evolved. Now, I have played a little Ark on my channel, but not enough, I think, to really class as it being on my channel, if you get my drift. But I have played over 200 hours of Ark now, and I played most of that within 6 weeks last summer holidays. What I really love about this game is I love survivals, but there aren't many survival games that really succeeded in putting you in a dinosaur-infested world. There were other survival games like The Stomping Land, which did that, but they weren't as in-depth as Ark. What the devs did with Ark is they didn't release it until they had a really good amount of content. With The Stomping Land, I think they released it way too early. However, with Ark, it's still in early access. However, there's so much content, you wouldn't know the difference. There are a couple of problems with it, of course, like your PC has to be an absolute beast to run it. The optimization is, of course, being improved every day, but especially when it first came out, even people with the best computers had really big issues with the optimization. But with more updates coming every single week and Ark becoming bigger and bigger, I can see it being one of my favourite games for a very long time. So if you like survival and you like dinosaurs, Ark Survival Evolved is definitely the game for you. I would advise picking it up right now. Now we move on to the final category, the top 3 games that didn't quite make the cut, however I do think definitely deserve some recognition. At number 1, I thought was a very good game, but a lot of people would disagree, is Evolve. Evolve, I think, was a very good game, personally. I thought it had a very interesting idea, it was a completely new game, and it had a lot to offer. However, I think the games did get repetitive very fast, and I do think that's why it flopped within about 2-3 months. However, if you're the kind of guy who likes to hunt or be hunted, it's definitely the game for you. And for me, it never really got repetitive because each match would play out very differently. Of course, you're doing the same objective, however, each match would play differently. A lot of it was based on luck. If you were in a certain place in a certain time, the shield might get you, or I've done it many times, you would miss the shield just by meters, and that realization that you may have just been in sudden death is enough to really drive you. Also, I like the fact that, especially on Hunter Team, you needed teamwork, and not games now try and integrate teamwork, but it doesn't always work. And for a Hunter Team to be very successful on Evolve, you really do need to integrate teamwork, and that is very much emphasised. I also like the fact that they brought out a lot of DLCs, they brought out new monsters and new hunters to try and keep it interesting. However, what I don't like about it is that you had to pay for the skins, and this wasn't like a couple of pounds, this was a ridiculous amount. I think at one point monsters were going for like 10 quid, which was just for a new monster is a little bit ridiculous. So I do think Evolve does definitely deserve some recognition, and I do know there's an Evolve 2 coming out for 2016, so stay tuned for that. The next game at number 2 is a game that really did surprise me this year, and that's Soma. If you don't know, Soma is a story-driven horror game, as you play as a guy who kind of goes into his own mind, almost, and goes into this underwater kind of world in the future. It's very hard to explain, and you'd have to play the game yourself, as the story is so in-depth, it's so hard to explain in just a couple of minutes. However, this horror game really did integrate more than just scares. You get a lot of young developers at the moment making new horror games, and yeah, that's good. However, most of them are just jump scares or making you scared, and I do like that rush, but what I loved about Soma is it went so much deeper. It went so much more in depth into the story. It's not just, oh, I'm looking for my dad, oh, he's dead, scare, or something like that. It's so much more in depth than that. There's a whole storyline to it, and a lot of it was controversial. There's a lot of controversy within it. Do you take a robot's life if he's still conscious? That's one of them. There was acts of passive euthanasia in the game, and for a horror game, that is very full on. At the end of this game, it really left me and my friends debating on whether it was the right thing to do at the end. I'm not going to spoil anything, but at the end, you make a decision, and we were debating, would you rather do this or would you rather do that if you were in that situation? It really did spark some debate for a couple of days, and that's why it's at number 2 on the list of recognition. At number 3 was perhaps one of the most interesting games of 2015, and that's Everyone's Gone to the Rapture. Everyone's Gone to the Rapture is a game that, like none other, it's set in the British countryside, and you play a person who's woken up and is walking around after everyone's disappeared. What's most interesting about this game is in every single game you play, there's always some form of life. There's always animals, or there's always people, and it's just so weird to be walking around in a world where there's absolutely no life at all. The only life that's there is the plants and these little figurations of people who were there, and you hear their voices. However, there's no actual people, and all the streets are absolutely dead, as if everyone had just disappeared suddenly. What I really love about this game is it's really immersive, the story is very interesting, and that really draws you in. There's about 8 hours of gameplay there, and for a PS4 exclusive, I don't think it has been given as much recognition as it deserves. It was a brand new idea, and I really do applaud the devs for developing that, as no one's ever tried it before, and it really was, for me, very successful. Of course, if you're an action-packed kind of person, you really want to be sticking to Call of Duty. It wasn't a very action-packed game. It was very surreal and very relaxing, and it's more for adventurers and explorers. If you want to explore the world and you want to find out what happened to everyone who's disappeared, then this game is perfect for you. I really do advise picking this game up. It is one of the most interesting games of 2015, and I cannot recommend it enough. This game was almost on my top 3, however, I think some other games or only just take the biscuit. But this game, wow, you have to play it, so amazing. So that wraps up my 2015 list of the best games of the year. Now, I would say my overall favourite game of the year, and I do have one, but I won't, because I do believe this year has been so good for games. I think all the games really deserve recognition, and I'm not going to say my overall favourite on the video, because it will cause a lot of arguments in the comments down below. But with that said, of course, this is just my opinion. You're entitled to your own opinion. Put your opinion down in the comments down below. I would love to know your top 3 games of this year. Put it in categories if you like. I don't care. I would really like to have a conversation, have a debate. I want to know what you guys think as well. Of course, you can never really pick a top game of any year because it really comes down to personal preference. A lot of people would say The Witcher is the best game, where others would say Life is Strange. It really comes down to personal preference, and that's why I hate it when you have like game awards and things like that, because you can't award a game for being the best when it really is personal preference. But with that said, I cannot emphasise enough how good this year has been for games. This year, I would argue, has been the best year for games in the last 2 to 3 years. It really has been, and I'm really hoping 2016 either lives up to 2015 or exceeds expectations. That would be amazing, but I don't think we're going to beat this year for many years to come. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, share and subscribe. It helps me out a bunch. Put your favourite games in the comments down below, and until next year, I shall say, goodbye.